Okay, let's see here. We might be live. Looks like Facebook and
Not on YouTube. I'm looking at it on YouTube. Oh, there you are.
okay, all right. Looks like we're live. Okay, we're streaming on X, YouTube. For some reason, there was an error on Facebook, so we'll see if we can fix that real fast. Oh well. Well, we tried. Let's see here. Make sure that we're live everywhere else. And it looks like it. Yes, we are. Okay. All right. So we're live everywhere except for maybe Facebook. We'll see what happens there. See if it'll work at some point, but sometimes it doesn't. Nothing we can do about it. That's okay though. We're live on everywhere else where it matters. Wow, X is just going through the roof. We're live on YouTube. So okay, so a couple things. So unfortunately, we're not. For some reason, Facebook isn't. And you know what? This is. Oh well. We'll just move forward. No worries. Okay, so how's everyone doing this evening? We have a lot to talk about, as there's quite a bit of tropical mischief out there that we're going to be studying. Before we do that, a couple of announcements. Okay, so obviously coming up for my birthday, I am going to be 4.5 years old, as I like to call it. Once you get past 40, you don't do 45. What you do 4.5. So then that way you're always forever young, right? So I think that works. That means that by the time I'm 100, I'll only be 10 years old. So it works. So with the birthday week coming, I will still have updates. I'll still do videos and all that stuff. But everything's going to be in the morning. The afternoons and evenings are going to be with me and my wife. We're going to go out. We're going to have fun. We're going to drive each other nuts. All that good stuff. And if there is some more tropical impact for our region, then we will have a live chat. But as it stands right now, we won't. And I'll explain why we won't in today's discussion. Along with that, also, I got a Fitbit, and I found something very interesting. See, I when I think a lot, I pace, and apparently I paced about 6 miles today, just going back and forth here. So if you ever get a Fitbit, it's really interesting just watching how much you actually walk. And they say if you go over 10,000 steps or around 10,000 steps, you can live a very healthy life, and it keeps you lean and all that stuff. So very interesting stuff. So I figure I share that with you. So let's talk about the tropics, shall we? So we've been watching this disturbance for literally like 7 days now, right? And this disturbance has been showing up on the model guidance, developing somewhere around the Bahamas, maybe into the Gulf Coast or up the East Coast. But it hasn't developed a warm core low yet. It has been producing convection on and off, but there has been no sign of any type of low-level circulation. Now, the NHC is putting a 60% chance of development somewhere basically around Florida. Looks almost like a heart shape here. Developing somewhere between the extreme western Bahamas, northern Cuba, northwestern Cuba, should I say, or around Florida or the Gulf of Mexico, eastern Gulf of Mexico. So right in this area right here. When you look at this on the observations, I'm talking about just looking at the observations here, I'm not seeing the most favorable environment. Okay? There's some dry air, a little bit of shear. You have a building ridge, so yeah, it's there. But this isn't a scenario where like, wow, this is going to blow up. And also, it kind of helps if there's, I don't know, some sort of low-level circulation. Give me a trough. Give me a well-defined trough. I don't even have that. This right here, this is interaction with the landmass of Hispaniola. right? You got the mountain range right here, so you got the winds coming in. I don't have even a well-defined trough. I got a lot of convection. I got a little mid-level shortwave. That's it. What I do have is a nice Western Atlantic ridge. See, there's a little bit of your shear component over here. It's not strong, but it's not like it's perfect out there. In this setup that we have right here, this has been the theme all summer long. You get a little weakness on the East Coast. You got your Western Atlantic ridge, and that extends all the way to the Western Gulf of Mexico and into Texas. And this is how we've been getting all of our deep tropical moisture surging into the region, and 850 millibar temperatures ranging anywhere between 16 degrees Celsius and 20 degrees Celsius, which basically puts us in the mid 80s to mid 90s, depending on the weather pattern. So this has been in place since really late May. And as I've been warning, anything that develops around the Bahamas, we have to keep an eye on. The further east the trough is, the more likely anything that develops is going to get kicked right out in the Atlantic. And the nature of the upper level troughs has continued to be in a positive tilt. Why is this important? Okay, when we have a negatively tilted trough, what happens is that your trough digs like this and your winds come in off the Atlantic from the southeast. So anything that develops out here gets drawn right into the East Coast. When you have a positively tilted trough, like this trough here is slight positive tilt, what happens? Well, your winds all come from the southwest. So in the spirit of the Olympics, this is like a goalkeeper, right? These tropical systems are your soccer ball. The goalie's going to kick the soccer ball right back out in the Atlantic in this type of pattern. Can you get a situation where a storm gets drawn up the East Coast? Sure. If the storm goes far enough west, the remnants could get drawn right up the coast, possibly along a stationary front. And there is our question. We got a couple of questions to answer here. That we're not going to get the true answer this evening, but I'm going to give you an idea where I'm heading on this. We know we have a tropical low pressure system that has a chance to develop, but it looks relatively weak. Now, what's fascinating is that a couple of days ago, if you looked at the operational European GFS, the ensemble guidance, they all had this rapidly intensifying low pressure system. Now in the ensembles, I barely have a low. I barely have development. We take a look at all of the guidance here. This is the spread on the European. We have some low pressure system development out here in the Eastern Gulf here. Let me zoom in on this so that way you can see. You have some development here, some development. So basically some development right around here. You know what I'm noticing? All these low pressure systems are weak. Why is that important? Well, let's go back to this chart here. This is our 500 millibar pattern. If you have a strong tropical system, it alters the 500 millibar pattern. Why is that the case? Well, when you have a warm core low, you have all your warm water down here, right? And the warm water is fuel, and that fuel gets drawn up into the center of the storm. So you have your warm core low, and then it expels out, right? So drawn in, expels out. Well, that expelling out, that is your upper level anticyclone, your high pressure, right? So it's expelling out, and you got above normal heights as a result of that, because you're taking mass and you're transporting it up into the upper atmosphere and then expelling it out. So that process, that expelling of latent heat, of moisture, builds up heights. And so the building up of heights can enhance your Western Atlantic ridge. So with that, if you have a strong tropical low, it would allow this ridge to build closer to the coast, and drive a tropical low pressure system up the coast. And that was some of the solutions that we were seeing in the ensembles and in a few operational guidance. The problem with that, and I warned about this literally last week, is that the operational guidance, pick whichever one, doesn't matter, always has a convective feedback error. And that convective feedback error leads to an over-enhancement of the upper level ridges. Because you're expelling more moisture, you're expelling more mass into the atmosphere, you're displacing more mass into the atmosphere, and there must be a balance as a result. But if that displacement is an error, then your storm track is going to have an error. Okay, so that's the basic idea. It's a little more complicated than that, more equations and this and that, but I'm not going to bore you with multivariable calculus at this time because we're not in college. So, but you get the basic idea, right? So what we're seeing now in a lot of the model guidance here, we had the GFS, European, Canadian, and UK Met. I threw in the UK Met for joke. You know, you got to give the UK a little bit of credit here. You know, they're having a little bit of a rough Olympics, so I want to give them a little credit. So on the GFS now, well, as always, the GFS has some fun. It develops the low to the south of Cuba, and it takes it up into the eastern Gulf Coast. Now, the problem with this solution is that it develops the tropical low far away from where the actual wave is. If you go back to the initialization, it's taking the wave focus to the south of Hispaniola, but you can see in the observations, it's really to the north. And if anything, if I'm going to focus on development, it's probably going to be around this cluster right around here. I'm seeing a little bit of a mid-level circulation up here, probably around 700 millibars or so. The strongest convection is right here. Your trough is like this. So if you're going to see development down here, well, maybe this cluster might take over, but not really seeing a lot of support. The location on a GFS, you'd have to take this and move this south. So you want to have the primary displacement over, let's say, Puerto Rico, rather than approaching the Bahamas. So the GFS is already at a disadvantage. But hey, look, we'll have some fun with it. That's what the GFS is doing. The European is struggling now to develop a low. And then once it does, it tracks it all over the place and tries to drag it up the coast, and I'm sure everyone took notice of this. Okay, so what is the problem with this? Well, first of all, it doesn't develop any type of circulation at all. So that whole idea just busts, right? Because it was supposed to develop by this weekend. Now it's not even having that. It has it trying to develop right over Florida, which I guess you could pull off via a brown ocean effect. Especially if you're over the Everglades. And then when it finally gets going, basically it powers up over the Gulf Stream. This wouldn't be a threat for the Mid-Atlantic, although it would be a lot of riptides and strong surf. The reason why is that you see this setup here. This all would suggest that anything that tries to develop is going to get kicked right out. But it is an interesting solution nonetheless. The Canadian just says, hey, what tropical low? It's just a weak trough. Oh, there we go. Tries to form one over Georgia. Probably not realistic. And then our friend the UK Met, it tries to develop a low over Louisiana. So what can we take from this? Do we share the most extreme solution, which would be the European guidance having a major hurricane possibly off of the Mid-Atlantic coast? Do we get overexcited about this? This is what we should do. We know that we don't have very good data or any type of observations of an organized low pressure system. We know we don't have any of that. We also know that in order to understand the pattern, we have to understand the strength of the low, right? And we know what the overall pattern is, our positively tilted trough. Okay. So this most likely is going to be a weaker low pressure system. If there's going to be a tropical impact, if anything, it's going to be around Florida right now. Is there a threat for the Mid-Atlantic? The threat for the Mid-Atlantic, I think, is going to be primarily via any type of remnant moisture. But because of the pattern we're in, we're going to be in a southwesterly flow here. So anything that develops over the coastal waters of the Carolinas is going to get forced out into the Atlantic in this scenario, not over the coastal plain. So you can see why this solution here, first of all, the way that it develops, it almost takes on, in some cases, let's go to this right here. I found something really interesting. The 850 millibar analysis of this, it takes on, there's a warm core here, but it also is kind of taking on a kind of a hybrid look. So to me, this looks like there's a lot of error involved here. So the best way I would take this in this forecast, and what I've been doing is saying, look, have your supplies in order, as you should, as I've been telling you for months now. But I wouldn't trust any one solution right now. I sure as heck wouldn't trust any extreme solutions of, let's say, a rapidly intensifying low pressure system. Because any low that is developing over the East Coast is going to be dealing with a lot of southwesterly shear with that positively tilted trough. So right now, if I was to look at this pattern overall, I see a poor environment for development. A lot of questions of whether or not we actually get a close tropical low to develop. And also an environment where you have a positively tilted trough in a weakness on the East Coast that would force anything out back into the Atlantic. So I'm not overly impressed with the threat here, but it's something that we need to monitor. And of course I will. And as discussed in the vacation analysis that I put out, if there is a storm threat, I will have a live chat. As it stands right now, no live chat next week. But if there is a storm threat, you can count on me being here. Because after all, it's what I do. So there we go. As far as the pattern overall, I wanted to touch on this because after all, we're moving into August starting tomorrow. And the big question is, where is our La Nina? I want to touch on a few things on this because there are some out there that are saying, well, because of climate change, we need to adjust how we look at our insular states. And I kind of question that a little bit. Okay, I get it. Okay, so you have very warm water, so the La Nina is going to look muted. Okay, I understand the basis of the idea. But you still have to acknowledge the fact that we're not seeing any forcing. I would be more inclined to say, hey, look, the La Nina statistical sea surface temperature analysis is going to be muted, but that shouldn't change then your gradient and the impacts on convection SOI, right? That shouldn't disappear. There should be some adjustment in the sea surface temperature, but the response should be the same in terms of tropical forcing. As we stand right now, our cold anomalies are not all that impressive. So if anything right now, our cold anomalies in the subsurface, this is the subsurface, let me zoom in on this here. So this is down to about 450 meters. So you could see the depth here. And of course, there's our cold pool, roughly down to about 250 meters in the ocean under our Encinal regions. Clearly, our focus is on the east side. Where we have the date line, we have plenty of warm water still. This is a neutral signal. At, at most, you have a weak east base signal. Okay. But let's go with the idea that, hey, look, because of climate change, because the Pacific is overall warmer, that these anomalies should be adjusted. Okay, fine. But then we should see some sort of reaction in convection or something of that nature. We really don't. We have some convection out here, which we shouldn't have in a La Nina. We have convection out here by the date line, but it's kind of on and off. You're not seeing a lot of increase in tropical development in the Western Pacific, which we normally do with a La Nina, even a weak La Nina. And don't get me started on the Atlantic. We still have vertical wind shear to deal with. We have plenty of dry air. We have substance all over the place throughout all of July. August, which was kind of advertised to be a banner month, thus far, when we're looking at the forcing mechanisms, it's kind of backed off on that a little bit. So, in our subtropical jet stream, well, that's alive and well for summer. So I'm not seeing a lot of forcing. Let's go deeper into this. Let's look at the statistical analysis that we would expect for a La Nina or El Nino, which is my favorite SOI. Because if you understand SOI, then that's the pressure differences. The pressure differences give you your wind differences. The wind differences sets up your vertical, your low level convergence zones and your convection zones and so on and so forth. So what we're talking about is the actual impact. Nada. Zero. This is as neutral as you could possibly get. It literally is wavering around zero for weeks, months. I don't have El Nino. I don't have La Nina. I got La Nada, right? So when I'm looking at this, even look at the monthly averages over, let's say, let me zoom in on this here so you can see better. April, May, June. April, negative. May, positive. Hey, look, maybe we're looking towards a La Nina state. Nope. Back to negative in June. July hasn't been much better. Much of July has been varying back and forth. The monthly average is going to end up negative. And when you're looking for a La Nina, you want positive. So we're not seeing a driver here. So right now we're dealing with neutral conditions. And the primary forcing mechanisms are completely muted in the tropics. I got my MJO in the zone of death, as I like to call it, the neutral zone. Literally nothing. And it's been like that all summer. So the primary forcing mechanisms that we're dealing with here through the month of August, and you could take this into September, is really driven off of what's going on in the Northern Pacific with the negative PDO. Even that's a little bit weak. So I don't have strong tropical forcing mechanisms. My stratospheric forcing mechanisms have been a little bit interesting this summer. In fact, I was reading some very interesting posts from Dr. Judah Cohen, and he was noticing how we've had a little bit more activity with some of the warmer stratospheric anomalies interacting with the troposphere, which is kind of unusual during the summer. Not 100%, not like never heard of, but usually you don't deal with that when you're dealing with the La Nina or any type of developing La Nina state. And that's led to a little bit more amplification. We're kind of backing off on that, so we're kind of minoring out on that. But this is all leading to a polar jet stream that is a little bit stronger. So as we move through August and head towards September, I'm removing the tropical forcing state and say, okay, not much is changing here, except for one thing. And that is that we're moving away from peak summer. Our polar air masses are going to be a little bit stronger. Not a lot stronger, but a little bit. So our polar jet stream is going to be a little bit stronger. Not a lot, but a little bit. And so that means as we move down towards the end of August, these cold fronts are going to get stronger. Our jet stream influence is going to be a little bit stronger. And the fact that even in this long range guidance, and this is for September 12th here, while I don't worry about the specific details, what stands out to me the most is that the theme is the same as what we saw in June, July, now most of August into September. Weak trough on the West Coast, a ridge around the Rockies, a weakness around the plains in the subtropical jet stream, polar jet stream, positively tilted trough, weakness from the Tennessee River Valley to the eastern Great Lakes, and our western Atlantic ridge. If you're looking for a change in the weather pattern, I don't have any good news for you. What you see is what you get. And until we get stronger forcing mechanisms to change this pattern, we're going to just get more of the same. Which means, unfortunately, if you're looking for a relief to some drought conditions, depending on where you're at, not going to see it unless you get hit with a good thunderstorm setup. The only thing that's really going to change this is maybe some tropical forcing. And unfortunately, if we look at the precipitation values here, what I'm seeing here is, again, you never take this verbatim, but the overall theme here is that if you get tropical lows, they're going to be swinging around the western Atlantic ridge, and they're going to get kicked out away from the mid-Atlantic quite a bit. You have some increased activity possible around the Gulf Coast, especially around the eastern Gulf Coast here, and you got a lot of activity out here. Notice you're not seeing a lot of above normal precipitation anomalies or high precipitation anomalies out here. Why is that the case? Well, let's think about this. What did I say about the trough, right? It's going to act like a goalie, kick the ball out back into the Atlantic. That's basically the theme we're seeing. Again, that doesn't mean it can't happen. I'm just saying the overall theme looks to be, here is our positively tilted trough. Here's our western Atlantic ridge. Caught in between, anything that develops gets kicked right back out. So, unfortunately, I'm not seeing a great deal of support for any type of significant above normal precipitation. We might be able to push to near normal with some thunderstorm complexes. As far as our pattern now through the weekend, well, if you like muggy conditions, it's going to be a great weekend. If you like going to the beach, well, maybe not so much. This weekend will not be a washout weekend in any way, shape, or form, but it will be unsettled, as it has been for much of the past couple of weeks. Now, when you take a look at your app and you see the raindrops and you see thunderstorms forecast, understand that synoptic models do not do a very good job with these type of forecasts. So let me show you what I mean. You have this trough hanging around here, and you're going to have replacing it with a stationary front. You have your southwesterly flow continuing, and this is the current observations right now, and not much is going to change between now and Sunday. So we've replaced this trough with a stationary front. You have these pesky showers and thunderstorms here. Most of them aren't going to be severe, but some of them are going to be capable of producing very heavy downpours, and because of all of the moisture that is in the atmosphere, this deep tropical moisture in the atmosphere is going to support the potential for frequent lightning. You could see a severe thunderstorm via a downburst wind gust, but that's going to be more of an isolated threat than anything else. Most of the showers and thunderstorms are going to be a 15 to 30 minute heavy downpour, frequent lightning, gusty winds. That's pretty much it. All of your tropical moisture here is going to stick around. And you can see why. Again, here is our 250 millibar winds. Our polar jet stream is pretty much up here, but you kind of get this ridge complex here. Here's your weakness. And your cold fronts, as they approach, they just keep on dying in this environment. We are in the middle of the summer, so really this isn't too much of a surprise of how weak it is. And in the water vapor satellite picture, this results in a lot of these little short waves marching across. They're pretty vigorous over the plains. By the time they get here, they're much weaker and they produce a lot of unsettled conditions. And so when we take a look at our pattern here through the weekend, what do we have? Our weakness here, positive tilted trough. Take a look here at the mid levels. See not much change at 850 millibar temperatures. Now the good news is that we're not looking at any like 20 or 21 degrees Celsius temperatures at 850 millibars, which means we're not talking about upper 90s for the most part. You might get a day, but not a string of days like we did back in June and July, but more of 88 and muggy, okay, in this setup. But as you can see, plenty of moisture. Your precipitable water values are going to be through the roof. Plenty of instability. So you're going to have these thunderstorms dancing around. Your winds aren't going to be all that strong, though. So this is why I'm not expecting a lot of severe thunderstorms, aside from a rogue thunderstorm. You're going to see more flash flooding threats than anything else in this pattern. And really not much is going to be changing in this until we get a stronger trough, which more likely is going to be more towards the end of August and then when we get into September. So in terms of convective forecasting, take a look at the NAM. Tomorrow's going to be pretty quiet. And then starting on Friday, we got some scattered showers and thunderstorms. Now you might be looking at this and saying, hey, look, this could be severe. Well, let's take a look at 18Z. It's nowhere near as strong. Why am I showing you this? The reason why I want to show you this is that even the mesoscale models are having a hard time pinpointing a lot of these potential short waves and severe weather threats because each run has a different look on the strength of these short waves moving through. And then they feed back on themselves via outflow boundaries. So what you basically have is a moisture-loaded environment. If you get a trigger, the thunderstorms go up. If the trigger doesn't develop as expected, it kind of short circuits. And you also see that very nicely here on the HRR guidance, kind of popping up here and there, a lot of disjointed analysis. So when you see that in the synoptic models, what you end up with is that instead of showers and thunderstorms broken up, you end up with this gobbledygook over here, all right? You get this what looks like a complete washout. And this is what you see on your iPhone or on your mobile phone, whatever, where you're looking at your weather app and it's looking like, oh my God, it's going to be a washout all weekend because this is what's pulling in. When in reality, what you have is a lot of scattered showers and thunderstorms. If you're lucky, you see nothing. If you're unlucky, you get hit with a thunderstorm for 15, 20 minutes. So plan accordingly. But it's not a washout this weekend. It's more of a nuisance. And so those are the overall thoughts. And now that I've shared with you my thoughts and my opining, now it's time for me to answer all of your questions. So let's see what we got. So as always, first we go with the live chat and the premium chat room, and they get all their questions answered. And then I go to social media. I ask my wife if there's anything going on, in this case, it would be X. Facebook, unfortunately, did not load tonight. Last week it was X. This week it's Facebook. I don't know. But we will answer all those. You're on Facebook?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll be damned.
You're on Twitter, you're on Facebook, you're not on Instagram.
Oh, well, what do I know? Okay, that works. I thought I was not on there. Let's see here. What does this look like? Oh, look. Oh, it popped in. I see. Okay. That's great.
Yeah, some things had a weird delay.
Yeah, figures. You know what? I blame all this on Al Gore. All right, so let's see what we have here in the community chat room. Let's see here. Good evening. Yankees completed a sweep of the Phillies today with all 6 runs driven in by LeMahieu. Congratulations. Look, Yankee fans, you don't have to worry about your team. It's okay if they have a losing streak. I know it's crazy, but they are human. It's okay. Take it from a Mets fan. Losing streaks happen. The key is not to have them at the last part of the season where you get knocked out of the playoffs, especially with the way the wild card's set up. But it's okay. You'll be fine. You guys got like 60 wins. You're well on your way to win 100 games, so don't worry about it. Took a look at 70 millibars on New School. There seems to be a broad, faint, diffuse counterclockwise airflow in the higher latitudes. Yeah, you're going to start to see more of that as we move forward. Usually, right around this year, it gets very, very weak. It's just starting to organize. You're reducing your sunlight. You're starting to cool the atmosphere in the stratosphere and the troposphere because you're reducing the amount of sunlight during the day up in the Arctic. So you're going to start to see that evolution. You're going to really see it take hold in September and then intensify from there. With the positive QBO state in place, you're going to see that even more so. Last year it was kind of diffuse and broken up. This year is going to be very robust. So I do expect a moderately strong polar vortex. So this year the theme is not going to be splitting or displacing the polar vortex. Well, yes, it will be displacing, but it won't be splitting or weakening or cracking or breaking. Instead, it's going to be like, we have a strong polar vortex. Can it get displaced towards North America and kind of sit and spin around the Hudson Bay? That would drive cold air into North America. Or will it sit right over the Arctic Ocean and keep all the polar air in Canada, and we get nada? We just get a near normal to slightly above normal 40s and 50s type of weather pattern with rain and some interior snow? Or do we get that displacement? That's going to be the key, because we're not going to see this thing split now with a positive QBO state. Short feels like the models are saying when, not if, to direct impact at some point in August around here via remnants, brush, or direct. Rob, I don't know about that. If we were having a negatively tilted trough or like an upper level low sitting around the Tennessee River Valley, then I'd be like, yeah, this is going to be able to draw systems in. What we're seeing instead with that positively tilted trough is a sustained southwesterly flow. So if there's going to be impact from remnants, I'd probably look more towards like if there was a landfall around the Florida Panhandle, then I would be looking for some sort of remnants to run up the coast, maybe. But in terms of direct impact, I think you're going to have perfect timing with that, and I don't see that so far setting up. But as always, we need to watch every tropical low and see how each environment develops and how that plays out. But this doesn't look like to me like the optimal setup, but we'll see. We have to keep an eye on it. We have to have an open mind. 250 millibars still amplified with a still noticeable subtropical jet. Yeah, that's my point with the whole La Nina thing, or La Nada, really. If you had a sustained La Nina, your subtropical jet would be significantly weaker. And part of the idea of a well above normal, and some people are already putting on historic idea of a tropical Atlantic season, was that we'd have no shear. And the lifting would be optimal. And what's the Sahara Desert? There's no dust. So we're just going to have tropical systems all over the place. Thus far, we have not seen that. And really, July has been dead. July is dead. It's dead. I mean, it's July 31st now, so it's dead. So we didn't have any type of significant tropical systems developing since Barrow got out of the way. And so it's been very quiet. Now, can that change? Sure. But thus far, based on what we're seeing, August is, struggling. We got one disturbance, and, the short waves coming off the African coast aren't exactly impressive yet. So, hopefully it stays that way. I would gladly take a bust in a strong hurricane forecast or above normal hurricane forecast and have it remain very quiet. It's good for gas money too, by the way, so go with that. Happy birthday. Just referred to birthdays as anniversary on your 21st birthday. You know what? Honestly, I mean, I don't everyone says, they're worried about getting older. I don't mind getting older because I just age like fine wine. That's what I tell myself.
Uh-huh.
I think it works. It works. Except when I get up in the morning and somehow end up hurting I hurt my shoulder waking up. Actually, I'm sorry. I was going to bed and somehow I hurt my shoulder. I have no idea how I hurt my shoulder. Sometimes, like when I was younger, I'd hurt my shoulder because I played football or I lifted weights. No. Now in my 40s, it's simply going to bed and I hurt my shoulder. Not doing anything vigorous or anything like that. I simply laid down and somehow I heard a crack.
I still think it was sympathy pains for me, but whatever.
I don't know what it was, but this is what, if any of you guys who are not, any guys or girls who are not 40 yet or not anywhere there, you don't have to do anything strenuous. All you have to do is go to bed or get up in the morning and somehow something gets hurt.
Go to sleep fine and wake up with an injury.
Right. No idea how. You do the best you can. I don't know. Anytime the negative PDO is strengthening again, or is it likely to remain weak? I'm not seeing anything that would suggest a reintensification. I'm going to be watching for trends in September. If there's going to be change, because here's what's going to happen. As we develop our polar jet stream, we should see more of an upper level low trying to develop around the Aleutians or something of that nature, right? So if we start to see that, then either we're going to see a weakening of the PDO state or intensification because the upper level low is causing a lot of upwelling. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that, see how that plays out, and see how the two factors play in against each other. Because the QBO state, and part of that with the pressure anomalies like the positive PNA and all that stuff, it's kind of like a chicken and the egg. Which one drives each other? Sometimes the PDO drives everything like it is now, and other times the PDO is being driven by other factors in the atmosphere because of the placement of upper level lows and storms. So it's a bad idea to just go with a general rule and try to stick with it because the atmosphere doesn't work like that, okay? The atmosphere does not care about what we call rules. The atmosphere just does what the atmosphere does, and we have to observe it and understand why it's doing what it's doing. And then we try to put definitions to it. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that all plays out. Outstanding questions so far. Let's see what we got here on YouTube. We're already getting winter questions here. All right, I'll say this about winter. If we have a neutral state or a weak La Nina state, it's much better news for you snow lovers than if we were looking at a strong La Nina. If it was a strong La Nina, all my snow lovers and all the snow plow guys out there would probably jump off a roof because it'd just be bad, okay? You could forget about type of snowstorms or anything. So with a neutral state, it's a little bit better environment. The positive QBO state kind of works against you, but that doesn't mean you can't get a high latitude blocking event and a couple of storms rolled off that, but it's hard to get a sustained value off that. I think we learned last year, don't put a whole lot of stock in the extended models. Even I kind of fell for that, to be honest with you. Why did I fall for it? Well, looking back on it, I had every model that you could possibly. I even had the Jamaican model. I had the Brazilian model. I had the European, the GFS, the CFS, all saying, hey, there's going to be a whole lot of high latitude blocking and a high potential for winter storms. What happened? More snow than the year before, no doubt, but you don't have to do much to get more than zero, right? But we learned that the models are having a hard time. Now, why is that? Well, we had that influence from Tonga, like the volcano. We have some climate change influence as well. We have to adjust for that. Okay. But I think because we're seeing so much water vapor in the stratosphere, it's altering the global circulations. And it's not just a matter of like, oh, well, there's a lot of water vapor. It's a matter of mass displacement and how that's impacting. Now, last year I did a little bit better job, but I still didn't get right the placement and timing. The timing of the high latitude block was off. We get a negative NAO, but the PNA didn't work out. So the storms ended up too far south. Or we had the right PNA, but the negative NAO didn't play out. So it wasn't that they didn't develop. It's just that each one developed at its own time. So everything was out of sync. Can that happen this year? Sure. Don't know yet. Likely won't know until we get there. But we'll be able to go over the overall themes and go from there. So the fact that we have more of a weak La Nina, if anything, is good news for you guys. It's good news for snow lovers. But it's not a guarantee. But it's certainly better than having a strong... Anytime you have a strong El Nino or a strong La Nina, it's bad news for snow lovers. Because what happens is that tropical forcing just overwhelms everything. And your timing gets all thrown off. The NWS discussion never mentioned any tropical threat in the long-term forecast. Well, it depends, I guess, on which NWS. And they might be trying to stay away from it because they're seeing the same concerns in the model guidance. So I get why they would. That's why I do what I do and they do what they do. They're outstanding forecasters. I actually worked with some of them in both the Upton and in the Philadelphia office. And they're great guys. They also have to work within I guess you could call it guidelines of what they can and can't talk about, right? So there is that aspect as well. Let's see here. When is the peak of hurricane season for us? Well, in the Atlantic in general, your peak time period is late August through mid-September. Then it kind of subsides as you move through September and mid-October. You can get tropical systems all the way through November, but it gets more and more difficult to pull off. But the peak time is late August through mid-September. Anything on Facebook or X? All right, it's all quiet. There we go. And wow, we're already up to almost 8:50 p.m. Not bad. Let's see. Also seems, let's see. Oh, I got a couple more things. Seems that the models, while they may pick up disturbances and splits of the vortex well at times, even then don't handle the location very well. Last couple of years, all disruptions and splits mostly went to Asia. That is true. I think that a lot of that has to do with a lot of that mass displacement I was talking about. And it's something that I'm frankly going to be struggling with. But I'm trying to figure out ways to make adjustments, seeing the model guidance, and then looking at the observations and say, okay, based on the errors that we know, let's see if this adjustment works and then see how that plays out. But right now, frankly, I'm kind of flying blind, and a lot of scientists are, because how long are we dealing with this mass displacement of all this water vapor in the stratosphere? How much of an impact is it going to be the next decade? Is it starting to wane? It's hard to say. And of course, as a result, we're having a lot of difficulty with the forecasts going on in the stratosphere. Isn't one of your past interns with the NWS now? Yep. I got a couple of interns actually that are floating around in there. And a couple who are who have started their own businesses or even studying in graduate school and starting to be like professors, and they're doing research. It's really exciting stuff. If you are interested in meteorology and you're a teenager and whatnot, the great thing about meteorology now that I didn't have when I was younger about 20 years ago, is that you have so many different avenues. You could do research. If you love research, you could do that. You can do teaching. You could be a operational forecaster, and in that you could do what I do, which is build your own platform. You could work for a company. You could work for the media, radio, TV is kind of more shifting more towards Facebook and stuff like that, but you still got some TV in there. And or you could just build your own channel and then earn your CDM. Okay, so I'm going to be working on that, by the way, a video on the CDM while I'm off this week, so that should be fun. So there's a lot you can do out there. All you have to do is have imagination. And don't worry about, if you get worried about the math, look, everyone struggles with the math. Only a psychopath enjoys multivariable calculus. Or one of my professors who literally got excited over it. But it's hard. It's okay if we failed the first time. It's fine. Failing is nothing more than an opportunity to get better. That's all it is. Now, if you fail and quit, that's a problem. But failing, there's nothing wrong with failing. Okay? Whether it's learning how to write properly, talking properly. Hey, look, talking properly, I struggled so much being able to talk in public. I learned how to get over that in high school by doing public announcements at Freoboro High School. When I started out, I was like mumbling until I learned how to enunciate. Even then, I somehow butchered the English language. So when you're going into this field, if you expect to be perfect, you are in for a world of hurt. So, failure is okay. Take it in. Make it your strength. Don't worry about the math. Everyone fails a class. Usually it's calculus 2. You'd think it would be multivariable calculus, but it's usually calculus 2 that really trips you up. And then once you get past that, then calculus 3 or multivariable calculus, depending on what they call it, is actually surprisingly easier. Like it just kind of clicks. But everyone has that stumbling block either with Calc 2 or Calc 3, one or the other. For me, it was Calculus 2. I had to take it again, but then once I got over that, Calculus 3 shot right through it. I just got it. It just clicked, right? And sometimes some people get it via the equations, and sometimes, for me, it was more like connecting the physical, what I was seeing physically since I was a little kid. Like I'd pick up these patterns, but I couldn't understand it mathematically until one day it just clicked. And that's literally what, like, it just opens up for you, right? So you take the math and you struggle with it, but then one day there's that aha movement. And I think everyone who's a meteorologist gets what I'm saying. You see the equations, you understand them, you understand how to derive them, all that stuff. But then there's that moment where you see the satellite and you see the math, and they both make sense. And you see how that equation works with what you're seeing on the satellite picture. It takes time. You may even have to fail a class or two, but you will get it. Let's see here. Any other questions anywhere else?
Nope.
All right. Okay. Well, wow, this hour went fast.
Yeah, it did.
So that's good. Hey, we're getting ready for the winter, right? Hey, I'm looking forward for some snowstorms. It'd be great. Fall. Are you ready? I am ready for Halloween. That's how ready I am. See, here's the thing. Here's the promise I made, because my wife loves Halloween, right? And I like Halloween too. And fall. But this is what we're going to do. Once we have my birthday, and that's done, starting next week, we start decorating for Halloween. And I got to figure out what costume I'm going to wear this year. What do you think, Batman? What do you think, hon? What should I do for Halloween this year?
You're so lucky you're pretty.
No, come on, seriously, what do you think?
I don't know. I haven't been thinking about costumes.
Last year I did Goku, which was okay. But maybe Batman or something of that nature. That should be fun. But I'm looking forward to that. And of course we could have baseball, playoff baseball, which that right there is going to drive. My wife is not interested in that at all.
That's okay.
And
We have more than one TV.
yes, see, here's the thing. If let me just share this. This is probably one of the last few things I'm going to share for tonight. If you get married,
Secrets to a happy marriage.
secrets to a happy marriage, have two TVs. Because if you want to watch something and she wants to watch something, doesn't have to be an argument about it. You go watch your sports and she watches
Whatever.
cartoons or whatever she wants, right? So I do my thing, she does her thing. It works beautifully. And then we watch something together. You see, that is the key to a wonderful marriage. Knowing when it's okay to step away and do your own thing. And then coming together and doing something together. And you bounce those two off, everything's beautiful. So on that, I think, let's see, I did college advice, marriage advice, and weather advice. You get it all here. What can I say? That's it for tonight. I'm going to close it out. Again, if there is more tropical development than what's expected, we will return next week. But for right now, we're having off for next week, and I'm going to go and have my birthday dinner. Have a wonderful night, and as always, stay safe out there.